Hey everyone, I'm Rebecca Brayton from MsMojo, and today we're taking a special look at the one and only Elvis Presley. We're taking you through the story and the songs of the King of Rock and Roll, from his early days to his biggest hits and everything in between. We begin by learning more about the man behind the music. This is the untold story of Elvis Presley.
Really, Elvis was all about the music, and people did not get that. People try to complicate it. The music was so much a part of his life that in sharing his music, you lived it with him.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're discussing the untold story of Elvis Presley.
Mom, they're gonna put me in jail.
The way you sing is God-given, so there can't be nothing wrong with it.
For this video, we're looking at the life and career of the King of Rock and Roll. Are you a big Elvis fan? Let us know in the comments. Life in Mississippi. Elvis Aaron Presley was born in Tupelo, Mississippi on January 8, 1935 to parents Vernon and Gladys. Sadly, Jesse Garin, Elvis's twin brother, who was delivered half an hour before him, was stillborn. The Presleys were a working-class family struggling to survive during the Great Depression. Vernon worked odd jobs until he was convicted of altering a check in 1938. He was sentenced to 3 years, though he only served 8 months. But while he was in prison, the Presleys lost their home, forcing Gladys and her son to move in with relatives. The Presleys attended the First Assembly of God Pentecostal Church, where Elvis became mesmerized by gospel music. And when he was 11 years old, he was gifted his first guitar. The music of Memphis. In November 1948, 13-year-old Elvis and his family relocated to Memphis, Tennessee. A big change from life in small-town Mississippi.
He loved the bright lights. He loved the music in the city. He loved hearing people on the street. He loved listening to music coming from the bars. And he'd study them.
The family moved to the Lauderdale Courts public housing complex. By the time he was in high school, Elvis frequented the Beale Street blues scene and all-night gospel performances.
And Elvis would hang at the Flamingo Room. When you realized that Elvis knew where Beale Street was and knew what that all meant, you could sense that he was different.
Elvis graduated from Humes High in Memphis in 1953 and worked as a truck driver for some time. He made his first recording at the age of 18 in the summer of that year. He bought some recording time at Sun Records to make a special 2-sided acetate disc for his mother, recording the songs My Happiness and That's When Your Heartaches Begin. This was how he was discovered by Sun Records founder Sam Phillips.
Elvis sets his coat down, picks up guitar, and starts just frailing the fire out of it. Just beating the rhythm thing. Well, Bill picked his bass, started slapping, playing along with him. Just all rhythm. Guitar was leaning up on the amp, and I picked it up and started just kind of vamping along with him.
In July 1954, Phillips had local musicians Winfield Scotty Moore and Bill Black audition Elvis and record a few songs together. The session wasn't going so well until Elvis started playing Arthur Crudup's 1946 blues song That's All Right. Days later, the song played on the radio and was an instant hit.
It shocked me because here is a classic blues number. And here is a white cat not imitating or mimicking or anything, but just putting his feel into it.
Presley, Black, and Moore's first live performance was at the Bon Air Club on July 17th, but it was their show at the Overton Park Shell later that month that proved Elvis was a star. He debuted his rubber legs moves that would become his signature dance style, causing women to literally scream in the audience.
The wiggle! The what? Them girls won't see you wiggle. Move, man!
Not long after, the trio started performing and recording regularly together, managed by promoter Bob Neal. After a lackluster response to his first and only performance at Nashville's Grand Ole Opry in October, Elvis performed on Louisiana Hayride and became a regular there on Saturday nights.
He's a young singer from Memphis, Tennessee. Give him a warm hayride welcome to Mr. Elvis Presley.
He was able to trade in his old guitar for a much more expensive one worthy of his musical talents. Commercial success and controversy. In 1955, Elvis was discovered by music promoter Colonel Tom Parker, who became the singer's special advisor and landed him a record deal with a bigger label, RCA Victor.
Colonel knew how to do it, had the contacts with the show in New York, the Tommy Dorsey show.
RCA didn't seem to be able to secure TV performances, and eventually Colonel Parker secures Elvis 4 shows to coincide with the release of the record in January.
Elvis's first million-seller, Heartbreak Hotel, debuted on January 27, 1956, and the next day, he made his national television debut on Stage Show. In March, Parker officially became Elvis's manager and quickly took control of everything, making sure he earned a big paycheck with every deal.
In the Colonel's view, whatever the songs were, whoever played on it didn't matter. It was Elvis. It was, in his mind, about the merchandise. He always called it the merchandise. And that's what it was to him and to RCA.
Later that month, Elvis's first studio album was released, and the singer went on to appear on The Milton Berle Show. He also did a 2-week Vegas residency, although the older conservative audiences there were decidedly unimpressed.
Also understand that in the 50s, when Elvis started singing black music, which young kids could hear on the radio but not buy, suddenly it became a political issue. Suddenly the music was jumping the race line.
But Elvis wasn't only into music. He also wanted to be a movie star. Parker secured him a 7-picture deal with Paramount, and clearly they made the right decision because his first film, 1956's Love Me Tender, was a hit.
Love me tender, love me long.
Before it was released in November, Elvis had already appeared on The Ed Sullivan Show, which arguably cemented his status as a celebrity.
You ain't nothing but...
Elvis Presley's style put him at the center of controversy with the older crowd, including politicians, producers, and even other artists. His sound was his own version of the black gospel music and rhythm and blues that he loved growing up. But for white audiences, it was something new and different.
Elvis and Elvis's music pointed to black culture and said, this is something that's filled with the force of life. If you want to be a complete and fulfilled person, if you want to be an American, this is something you need to pay attention to.
Elvis's provocative moves and gyrating hips sent fans into a frenzy. He was told to tame his act, and was filmed from the waist up during his third Ed Sullivan appearance on January 6, 1957. Military, movies, and marriage. Elvis received his draft notice in December 1957, but was able to defer until he wrapped filming on King Creole.
If you're looking for trouble, just look right in my face.
He was officially drafted into the U.S. Army on March 20th, 1958, much to fans' dismay. But RCA made sure to plan for this hiatus and released pre-recorded music while Elvis was overseas. That August, his mother Gladys passed away at the age of 46. And after threatening to go AWOL, her son was granted time to be with his mother for her last days and funeral. After serving 2 years, Elvis was honorably discharged and returned home on March 2, 1960. He jumped right back into the studio to record, and in April, he released his 4th album, Elvis is Back. However, the star continued churning out movies too, releasing both the film and soundtrack for GI Blues in 1960. In fact, he dedicated much of the decade to movies, starring in roughly 3 productions a year while also recording soundtracks for many of them. Blue Hawaii, Girls, 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 and Viva Las Vegas are 3 of the most well-known in his filmography. While stationed in Germany, the 24-year-old soldier met a then 14-year-old Priscilla Beaulieu. The two married on May 1, 1967 in Las Vegas when Priscilla was 21, though she had moved in with the star several years earlier.
Never met anyone like you.
I hope not.
The couple had daughter Lisa Marie 9 months later, on February 1, 1968. the comeback and downfall. After years in Hollywood, Elvis wanted to get back to his music. He did the '68 comeback special and revived his music career, reminding audiences that the king still had it.
Everybody in the wholesale block was dancing to the jail rock.
In 1969, he began performing consistently sold-out shows in Las Vegas. But Elvis's growing substance use disorder marked the beginning of the end.
To me, no matter how frustrating the lapses in his career have been, he remains an artist.
Problems in Elvis and Priscilla's marriage led to infidelity, allegedly on both sides. And after separating in February 1972, their divorce was finalized in October 1973. The performer's health was in decline, and he appeared heavily under the influence on several occasions. In 1973, he overdosed twice, with one time resulting in a coma. But Elvis didn't want to slow down, and instead continued to perform while suffering from a myriad of health issues, including hypertension and glaucoma.
I think he's feeling very hurt. He's very down. He's very alone. He doesn't understand what's happened to music. He got left out of that. He had become a thing. He was no longer Elvis Presley. He was Elvis.
After a few more years of grueling tour schedules and concert specials, Elvis performed what would be his last concert. On June 26, 1977, the King played in Indiana and closed out the night with Can't Help Falling in Love.
But I can't help falling in love.
Tragic death. On August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley was found unresponsive by his then-girlfriend, Ginger Alden. Though people continued to speculate and theorize, his cause of death was determined to be heart failure, most likely related to his substance use issues and poor health. A funeral was held 2 days later at his home, Graceland, where he was buried next to his mother and grandmother on the property. He was just 42 years old.
If he were here today looking outside and seeing all the people that still loved him, missed him, he would, I don't know, he wouldn't believe it.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Legacy and cultural impact. Elvis Presley is one of, if not the most influential and recognizable artists of all time.
Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas tied the knot with an Elvis impersonator. And so did Stranger Things actor David Harbour and Lily Allen.
His records, live performances, television appearances, and movies made him a staple in pop culture. And with countless covers, remixes, and tributes, the King's legacy lives on. Unfortunately, Elvis has also become a punchline, particularly because of how his appearance changed in his later years as his health suffered.
When someone becomes wallpaper, I mean, there's a great fan base who I love and respect for Elvis, but there's a lot of people who think he's a Halloween costume.
Elvis's only child, Lisa Marie, also got into the entertainment business as a singer-songwriter. Lisa's late son, Benjamin Keough, was musically gifted as well, and his sister, actress and filmmaker Riley Keough, has a successful career of her own.
The first movie I ever watched in the theater where I went, I want to make movies, was Moulin Rouge when I was 12. Wow. You know, and so that was a really, it was a real honor to know that he was interested in making this film.
Elvis has been the subject of numerous documentaries, shows, and films. Baz Luhrmann's musical biopic Elvis premiered at the 2022 Cannes Film Festival, receiving a 12-minute standing ovation. The film follows the rising star from his youth into older adulthood, with actor Austin Butler in the titular role. Luhrmann focuses on the relationship between Presley and his controlling manager, Colonel Tom Parker, played by Tom Hanks.
In that moment, Elvis the man was sacrificed, and Elvis the God was born.
I'm gonna show you what the real Elvis is like tonight!
No matter the medium, Elvis Presley continues to be a celebrated music icon with a dedicated and still growing fan base spanning all ages.
But that's the thing about Elvis is he's sort of become the wallpaper of society, and he's such a superhuman figure.
Elvis may have had his ups and downs throughout his life and career, but there's no question that he recorded some of the most beloved, memorable, and important songs in the history of rock and roll. To that end, let's take a look at some of them with WatchMojo's list of the top 20 Elvis Presley songs.
Baby, let me be your loving teddy bear.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 Elvis Presley songs. For this list, we'll be looking at the king of rock and roll's greatest songs ever. Thank you very much. Number 20, That's All Right. Previously recorded by Arthur Crudup, Elvis jokingly started playing a sped-up version of That's All Right during a recording session while guitarist Scotty Moore and bassist Bill Black were taking a break.
Well, that's all right, mama. That's all right with you.
Producer Sam Phillips, hearing a hit, made them start over so he could record it, and 2 days later the song officially made its radio debut. It was popular enough to get 14 plays that night and forced Elvis out of a movie theater and into an on-air interview. 2 weeks later, That's All Right was officially released, selling 20,000 copies, launching Elvis's career and arguably birthing rock and roll as we know it.
That's all right, anyway you do.
Number 19, Viva Las Vegas. As soon as you get to the chorus of this one, you can't help but sing along.
Bright light city, gonna set my soul on fire.
Viva Las Vegas comes from the Elvis film of the same name and has become a sort of calling card for the city itself. So much so that Las Vegas even tried to make it the city's official song. The instrumentation of Viva Las Vegas is instantly recognizable, with its rollicking guitars and Elvis's signature grumbling baritone. It's impossible to listen to it just once, and much like Elvis on a trip to the casino mecca, it makes us wish there were more than 24 hours in the day.
Viva, Viva Las Vegas.
Number 18, Blue Christmas. There are so many recordings of Christmas standards, it's hard to stake your claim as the signature version. Only big names like Judy Garland, Nat King Cole, and Mariah Carey have been able to secure their spot in holiday history. And of course, Elvis Presley.
I'll be so blue, just thinking about you.
Blue Christmas was initially recorded in 1948 by an artist named Doy Odell, but when Elvis took the reins in 1957, the song shot to icon status. Elvis's vocals sound incredible on the recording, and we love singing along to this one while we sip on our eggnog every holiday season.
Have a blue Christmas.
Number 17, Burning Love. Burning Love may not have started life as an Elvis song, but once he put his stamp on it, it was in the King's domain for all time. First released to semi-obscurity in early 1972 by Arthur Alexander, it was quickly picked up, covered, and re-released by Presley in August of the same year, becoming a number 2 hit and Elvis's last American top 10. Brimming with energy, the lead guitar from songwriter Dennis Lind, and the incredibly busy drum work of Ronnie Tutt, Elvis had actually been reluctant to record the rocker due to his recent and difficult separation from Priscilla. But 6 takes in, the old magic was back. Number 16, Always on My Mind.
Maybe I didn't treat you quite as good as I should have.
Gwen McCrae and, more famously, Brenda Lee may have released it first, and it may have netted Willie Nelson a Grammy long after the fact, but for many, the definite version of Always on My Mind belongs to Elvis.
You were always on my mind.
Originally written by Wayne Carson in around 10 minutes, it was eventually sent to Presley to be recorded in March of '72, just weeks after Elvis and Priscilla separated. Released as a B-side to his single Separate Ways, this heartfelt track remains an unforgettable country ballad.
And I guess I never told you I'm so happy that you're mine.
Number 15, Return to Sender. The smile, the eyes, the hips, the king deploys them all to great effect on the 1962 hit Return to Sender.
She wrote upon it, return to sender, address unknown.
Written by Otis Blackwell and Winfield Scott, and performed by Elvis in a movie called Girls, 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 the song's lyrics paint a cheeky picture of a man desperately hoping to make up with his lover, but she keeps ignoring his letters. The driving rock and roll beat of this little ditty is perfect for Elvis's style and persona, allowing him to be charming with just a hint of trouble. You can't stay mad at that face for long.
No such person, no such zone.
Number 14, An American Trilogy.
Old times are not forgotten. Look away, look away.
Although he wasn't the first to present this medley to the world, and he did not release a studio recording of it, An American Trilogy became synonymous with Elvis nonetheless. A musical weaving of three iconic and symbolic American songs, the unofficial Confederate anthem Dixie, the African-American spiritual All My Trials, and the Union Army March, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, the trilogy was first arranged and released by Mickey Newbury in 1971.
Glory, glory, hallelujah.
By 1972, it had become a show-stopping mainstay in Elvis's concerts, allowing him to demonstrate the true power and range of his voice, while also expressing his deep love of his home country. Number 13, If I Can Dream. Dilemma. You're the musical director of an important TV special. The producers just cut I'll Be Home for Christmas, and they need you to come up with a replacement. What do you do? Well, if you're W. Earl Brown, you write If I Can Dream, and if you're Elvis, it changes your life.
Where hope keeps shining, oh everyone, tell me why.
Slotted as the final song in Elvis's '68 comeback special, the song makes nods to the then recently assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy. It so moved Presley that he decided then and there to never sing a song or act in a film he didn't truly believe in ever again.
Please let my dream come true.
Number 12, A Little Less Conversation.
Hey, a little less conversation, a little more action, please.
Originally written for and rejected by Aretha Franklin, this track was retooled and presented to Presley for the film Live a Little, Love a Little, a box office dud.
All this aggravation ain't satisfaction in me.
Released as a B-side to Almost in Love, it barely charted and took over 2 years to find a home on an album. It was re-recorded for the '68 comeback special, but this do-over was ultimately not used until 2002, when it was remixed by Dutch DJ producer Junkie XL. Modernized and revamped, the track went to number 1 in 13 countries, finally becoming a monster hit long after Elvis had left the building for good. Number 11, In the Ghetto. Written by Mac Davis and originally subtitled The Vicious Circle, the marriage of In the Ghetto and Elvis Presley almost never happened.
Now, people, don't you understand that y'all need to help me hand?
Davis had first offered the song to Bill Medley of the Righteous Brothers, and then the singer-comedian Sammy Davis Jr., both of whom turned it down. Elvis himself had even been reluctant to record it, given its overt social commentary. But once he took it on, it became the perfect showcase for the power and emotional depth of his voice.
He starts to roam the streets at night, and he learns how to steal, and he learns how to fight in the ghetto.
It also provided him with a 13-week run on the American charts and a UK top 10, charting out at number 2 as well. Number 10, Blue Suede Shoes. 1 for the money, 2 for the show. You know the rest. Blue Suede Shoes is one of the most well-known rock and roll songs of all time, and any rocker worth their salt knows how to play it to perfection, including Elvis Presley.
You can knock me down, step in my face, slander my name all over the place.
Guitarist and singer-songwriter Carl Perkins first recorded the song in 1955. Elvis then recorded and released it as a single in 1956. The song was also the first thing fans heard on his debut studio album, simply titled Elvis Presley. It's one of the King's best-known songs to date, and one that'll keep on standing the test of time. Number 9, Are You Lonesome Tonight? Now this one's a true classic. Written by Roy Turk and Lou Handman in the 1920s, multiple artists took a stab at the song before it finally crossed Elvis's mind more than 30 years later.
Tell me, dear, are you lonesome tonight? Whoa, 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 whoa.
The tune was one of the first Elvis recorded after he came back from the Army and features the Jordanaires giving beautiful backing vocals. According to legend, Elvis didn't initially love his performance of the song and asked producer Steve Scholes to throw that tune out. But he was convinced to try it again, and the song's melancholy nature and the spoken bridge fit Elvis's vocal timbre quite beautifully.
Is your heart filled with pain? Shall I come back again?
Number 8, Don't Be Cruel. Now, don't let Hound Dog overshadow this one. The B-side of that single track is a pretty rockin' tune as well. Don't Be Cruel was written by Otis Blackwell and recorded by Elvis in 1956. Often counted as one of the greatest rock and roll songs of all time, Don't Be Cruel is a perfect match for Elvis's signature style. It's another one with the lovely Jordanaires singing backup, their smooth vocals pairing well with Elvis's rumbling twang. This one is just a lot of fun, and you can tell everyone making it is having fun too. Number 7, Love Me Tender. We all know Elvis Presley's signature rock and roll tunes, some of which are still to come on this list. But he also had a knack for great love songs.
For my darling, I love you.
Love Me Tender was initially released in an Elvis-led movie of the same name and gets its gorgeous melody from an old Civil War ballad. Since Elvis's version of the song, a number of famous artists have recorded the tune, including the likes of Julie Andrews, Johnny Cash, Barry Manilow, and Linda Ronstadt. But nothing beats the rich tone and the simple elegance of the King's version.
Love me tender, love me long.
Number 6, All Shook Up. Sometimes the simplest of ideas become a rock and roll classic.
I'm all shook up.
All Shook Up was released by Elvis in 1957 and is one of the King's most recognizable songs to date. The song has an easy melody, simple lyrics, and a beat you can dance to, making it a shoo-in for popularity at the time, and also making it one of Elvis's most fun songs to listen to live. The song is so famous and so associated with Presley that in 2005, it was the song chosen to be the name of a Broadway jukebox musical of Elvis songs. Honestly, there's no better choice they could have made.
Oh, please don't ask me what's on my mind. I'm a little mixed up, but I feel fine.
Number 5, Heartbreak Hotel. That signature blues lick paired with the emotion and pain in Elvis's voice, pure musical perfection.
Well, it's down at the end of Lonely Street at Heartbreak Hotel.
The inspiration for Heartbreak Hotel is said to have come from a news story that songwriter Mae Boren Axton read about a man so lonely he jumped out of a hotel window. The story clearly resonated for a number of listeners as the song made music history, steadily climbing the country, pop, and rhythm and blues charts all at the same time. Heartbreak Hotel became a favorite at Elvis's concerts and lives on as one of his very best today. Number 4, Jailhouse Rock. Elvis really did know how to do it all. He could be tender, he could be sexy, he could be serious. Unsurprisingly, he knew just how to mix progressive ideas and be a little tongue-in-cheek at the same time.
Everybody in the whole cell block was dancing to the Jailhouse Rock.
Jailhouse Rock, like a lot of Elvis songs, was recorded for a movie, and the sequence quickly became one that's still studied today. The lyrics in Jailhouse Rock allude to a gay romance between inmates, and the movie sequence itself isn't shy about featuring a lot of men gyrating around together. In recent years, the sequence and song have both become more recognized and celebrated for their queer sensibilities.
Number 47 said to number 3, you were the cutest jailbird I ever did see.
Number 3. Hound Dog. While it wasn't uncommon for Elvis or other artists to cover songs at this time in history, you might be surprised to learn that one of his most famous songs was a cover of an already pretty well-known number.
You ain't nothing but a hound.
Hound Dog was originally recorded by legendary R&B singer Big Mama Thornton in 1952 and was one of her only big hits. Elvis first heard a different version of the song in 1956 and fell in love with it. His version is now by far the most popular, although the song has been recorded upwards of 250 times.
You ain't nothing but
Elvis is great, but if you can seek out Mama Thornton's rendition, we definitely recommend it. Number 2. Can't Help Falling in Love. Remember all of our talk about love songs? Well, time to break out the tissues. Can't Help Falling in Love was written for the Elvis film Blue Hawaii, but interestingly enough, wasn't really written with Elvis in mind at all.
Take my hand.
Originally, the song was meant to be sung by a woman and was called Can't Help Falling in Love with Him. This explains some of the rhyming choices throughout the lyrics, such as in and sin. Eventually, however, things changed and Elvis became the one to sing what's considered one of the greatest love songs ever written. With its simple lyrics and lilting melody, it's no wonder.
Falling in love with you.
Number 1. Suspicious Minds. Suspicious Minds was first recorded for release by songwriter Mark James in 1968. James had written some hits for other artists, but this recording was unfortunately a commercial bust. Of course, Elvis's luck was a little different.
because I love you too much, baby.
The King recorded the song in 1969 and it became a number 1 hit for that year, as well as one of the biggest songs of Presley's entire career. The song is extremely well written to James's credit and tells the story of a couple who just can't seem to trust each other. Elvis is a perfect fit for the song vocally with his smooth, sultry tone exuding pain and heartbreak.
Oh, let our love survive. Oh, no.
Classic and timeless are just 2 words you can use to describe someone like Elvis, whose songs and even his entire persona have transcended generations. Even in 2022, there's enough interest in this icon to merit the production of a lavish musical biopic by Baz Luhrmann. Let's take a look at the things that Elvis 2022 got factually right and wrong.
I'm gonna do what I want to do. Sing the music that I want.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 things Elvis 2022 got factually right and wrong.
I need to get back to who I really am. And who are you, Oz?
For this list, we'll be looking at plot points from this 2022 biopic that were faithful to the king of rock and roll, and creative liberties that director Baz Luhrmann took. This entails a few spoilers. What are your thoughts on Elvis, both the film and the music legend himself? Number 10. Colonel Tom Parker met Elvis during his carny days. Wrong. The film introduces Thomas Parker as a carny who stumbles upon his big break when he first hears Elvis.
Saw his effect as he was singing on the audience, mostly of women, girls and women, and realized he had perhaps, this was perhaps the greatest carnival attraction on the planet Earth.
Although it is true that Parker initially assumed that Elvis was black, the dawn of their professional relationship has otherwise been exaggerated. In the movie, Parker guides Elvis through a hall of mirrors to a Ferris wheel. It's here that Parker becomes Elvis's manager, sending them on an unstable carnival ride.
Are you ready to fly?
I'm ready.
ready to fly.
In reality, Parker had already upgraded from Carney to talent management, promoting artists like Tommy Sands, Eddie Arnold, and Hank Snow. While Elvis did open for Snow, the whole Ferris wheel conversation with Parker never happened. Parker also wasn't present at the show depicted in the film, where Elvis overcomes his performance jitters with some jiggling.
He was my destiny.
Number 9. Elvis performed Hound Dog to a Hound. Right. With Elvis gyrating proving too risque for a clean-cut crowd, there was an attempt to introduce the new Elvis. The King unleashed a new persona on NBC's The Steve Allen Show, where he traded his usual attire for blacktails and a bow tie.
It's not too often that I get to wear the suit and tails and all that stuff. But I think I have on something tonight that's not quite correct for evening wear.
Not quite formal? What's that, Elvis?
Blue suede shoes.
Elvis also sang Hound Dog to an actual basset hound dressed up like the Monopoly guy.
When I said you was high class, well, that was just a lie. Yeah, they said you was high class.
Although this is all depicted in the film, it suggested that Parker invented the new Elvis to keep the authorities off his back. It was really Steve Allen who insisted on the funny costume, the basset hound, and the new Elvis, as the TV host wasn't a fan of rock and roll. While Allen's role is downplayed here, Elvis indeed wasn't a fan of the idea.
You ain't never gonna rabbit, you ain't no friend of mine, you ain't nothing but I.
Number 8. Elvis's childhood lightning bolt accessory. Wrong. Lerman has said that his interpretation of Elvis isn't so much a biopic as it is a superhero film. The film thus draws inspiration from Elvis's favorite superhero, Captain Marvel Jr.
How do I look?
Fresh.
No, we're not talking about the Marvel Comics character. We mean DC's Freddie Freeman, who's better known nowadays for his association with the Shazam family. Comic names can get confusing, but we digress.
Say my name.
Billy! No, not my name. No, say the name that I say to turn into this guy.
In the movie, Elvis is such a Captain Marvel Jr. fan that he hangs a lightning bolt over his chest. Although Elvis didn't have an accessory like this as a child, he would pay tribute to his favorite hero through his haircut and half capes.
I could see the hair thing, using the hair, but I really wish he had worn a blue jumpsuit.
DC returned the favor in the comics, where Captain Marvel Jr. has professed his admiration for Elvis. Number 7. Young Elvis went to gospel church revival meetings. Right. Rock is rooted in African American music. With Elvis being such an integral figure in popularizing rock, it's not surprising that he grew up surrounded by the sound in a black community.
A time where the country was into racism and segregation, and here was a young kid. He was not afraid to go and be exposed to it so he could learn even more about it.
Elvis spent the first 12 years of his life in Tupelo, Mississippi. At one point, his struggling family moved to a mostly black neighborhood where gospel church music helped plant the seeds for the performer within.
Those Pentecostal preachers were pretty dynamic individuals, back and forth across the stage and shouting and raising their hands and being very theatrical.
Elvis remained respectful towards the African American community even after moving, although some would accuse Elvis of cultural appropriation. Others say that Elvis's music brought attention to a marginalized group. It's also been said that Elvis's music wasn't black, white, pop, or country, but something, quote, different.
The American teen just knew it rocked. No white music had ever done that.
In any case, Elvis knew he owed a debt to black musicians. Number 6. Priscilla's age when she met Elvis. Wrong. As depicted in the film, Parker saw an opportunity when Elvis was drafted by the U.S. Army, believing it would settle his rebellious attitude. Parker even had the media present when Elvis got his Army haircut. And yes, Elvis met his future wife Priscilla Beaulieu while serving overseas in Germany.
My father was stationed there, Air Force, and a man came up to me and said, "Would you like to meet Elvis Presley?" And I thought he was kidding. I said, "Sure."
In the film, though, the two are made out to be roughly around the same age. In real life, Elvis was in his 20s while Priscilla was 14 when they met. Despite an age difference of almost 10 years, the two spent a lot of time together until Elvis returned home.
I couldn't really even see him as a movie star anymore, that he was so much deeper.
Priscilla's parents allowed her to visit Elvis when she was around 17, and Priscilla moved to Memphis by the time she turned 18.
the gates of Graceland opened up. It was everything that he described. It was bigger than life for me.
Number 5. Parker was an illegal alien who changed his name. Right. For much of the film, Colonel Tom Parker is portrayed as an enigma.
As Baz Luhrmann said the very first time I met him, he wasn't a colonel, he wasn't a Tom, he wasn't even a Parker.
It's eventually revealed that he's a Dutch immigrant who came to the U.S. illegally, explaining why he doesn't want Elvis doing a world tour. Indeed, Elvis's manager was born Andreas Cornelis van Kock. Upon arriving in the States, he enlisted in the Army as Tom Parker, later being discharged. Parker gave himself the colonel rank while working on Jimmy Davis's governor campaign. When Elvis wanted to take his act to Japan, Australia, and beyond, Parker reportedly told him, quote, "If you go, I'm not gonna go with you."
But he knew that he could do whatever he wanted to, and nobody told Elvis Presley what to do, because he was a very strong person, and we had a great relationship. But I took care of mine, he'd take care of his.
While it's hard to say if the authorities ever blackmailed Parker, his true nature didn't become public knowledge until after Elvis's death.
He was both a genius and a scoundrel. He was both a very disciplined man and also a guy that you might want to check your wallet to see if you still have all those 5s and 10s.
Number 4. How Elvis's 1968 comeback special went down. Wrong. 1968 was a crucial year for Elvis, with his televised comeback special marking his first live performance in 7 years. Although the film gets certain details about the special right, much of this chapter is tweaked for dramatic effect. While Elvis grew more enthusiastic about the project after talking to producer Bob Finkel, they didn't meet at the Hollywood sign. Parker was resolute about having at least one Christmas song in the special, but there wasn't an entire holiday set built that Elvis brushed off at the last second. Most notably, Robert F. Kennedy wasn't shot during the special's taping. However, Elvis was inspired by the assassinations of Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., both of which occurred earlier that year.
Tragedy, but it has nothing to do with us.
It has everything to do with us.
Number 3. Parker took much of Elvis's income. Right.
There are some who'd make me out to be the villain of this here story.
Some say that Elvis might not have become a superstar without Parker. Others say that Parker held Elvis back, resulting in his star fading far too soon.
Whoever said that is fine. They can say what they want to. If I was them, if they know so much, they ought to go into management business.
While the film seems split down the middle about Parker, Luhrmann makes it no secret that Elvis's manager cheated him out of millions. It was customary for Parker to receive 50% of Elvis's earnings, although Parker argued that it was Elvis taking half of what he earned. Elvis was unable to end his working relationship with Parker due to financial reasons. Following Elvis's death, Memphis attorney Blanchard Toole deemed that Parker's 50% was more than what the average manager received, and that in the past 3 years alone, Parker defrauded Presley's estate between $7 million and $8 million.
He did his part, I did mine, and there is no answer for that.
Number 2. Elvis fired Parker while performing on stage. Wrong. According to the film, the dynamic between Presley and Parker erupted during a live Vegas performance. Having learned that Parker's been lying, Elvis fires him in front of the audience. There's little backing this melodramatic blow-up, although there is some truth in there.
There was the bond, but they were two very different people.
Elvis outgrew Colonel Parker as an artist, but he didn't know how to cut the strings.
In 1973, Elvis became enraged when the Hotel Hilton fired the maitre d' Mario, whose wife was suffering from cancer. When Elvis didn't get anywhere with Parker, he verbally attacked Baron Hilton from the stage. Parker and Elvis got into a shouting match after, with the latter firing his manager. In response, Parker quit, but it'd take $2 million to buy him out of his contract. After 2 weeks, Elvis and his father saw no choice but to take Parker back.
We are the same, you and I. We are two odd, lonely children reaching for eternity.
Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions. Elvis was in talks for A Star Is Born. Right. When Parker insisted his client get top billing, Chris Christopherson got the role. I hate Elvis buttons. Right. Parker cleverly capitalized on his client's haters. Hi, Dr. Nick. Right. George C. Nicopolis overprescribed Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, and other patients.
Says the scandal could have done in a lesser man.
It could have destroyed him totally. But I will say this for him, he kept his head up. And pretty much his mouth shut.
Elvis's father was imprisoned. Right. Vernon Presley did time for altering a check.
Thankfully, he doesn't have to spend the 3 years. He only spends 6 months in prison. But what it does is it starts a pattern of Vernon being away and Elvis and Gladys being left to their own devices.
Elvis's mother died during his basic training. Right. He received emergency leave after she was diagnosed with hepatitis.
And when his mother died, he left a hole in him. He was never whole again, as it were.
Number 1. Parker signed Elvis to Vegas due to his gambling debts. Maybe. Just when Elvis thinks he's out, Parker pulls him back in by booking Vegas's International Hotel. Parker arranges a deal for Elvis to annually perform a month-long engagement for the next 5 years.
It doesn't make any sense, really, to keep him from touring other countries, to keep him from really going the whole way with the music.
This is all true, and as the film depicts, Parker reportedly had the initial contract written on a stained tablecloth. What's debatable is if this deal would erase Parker's debts. In any case, it's widely believed that Parker wanted Elvis to play in Vegas to prevent his gambling losses from ruining him.
He does not have an artistic bone in his body. He does not care about the output of his one client, Elvis Presley. His job was to promote whatever came out of that guy.
Even if he had a deal with the International Hotel, Parker apparently owed the Hilton $30 million when Elvis died. The debts seemingly caught up to him, because by the time Parker died, his net worth was only $1 million.
He was a bad guy. He was a bad manager. I think he was, because he didn't maximize his fabulous artistic potential.
That's it for today. Until next time, Elvis has left the building.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.